Welcome to Ladies of Another View. I'm Beck. Thanks for joining us the Friday before Memorial Day, big weekend coming up. We'll talk more about that later. But I'm joined with April and Carmen. And thank you for coming to the show today. Kilee Harmon, the Executive Director of Gaia Home, right?
Yes, correct.
We're going to talk about what that is, but I also want to let viewers know to stay with us because we're going to have a military vet who's going to tell us some very touching stories about his experiences and some of his friends that didn't come home. But it's going to be very beautiful and touching. So we'll get into that later on. But right now we have Kilee here.
Hi.
And thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so glad because you and we try to keep coming up with dates, and we had to get this done. So just in time, because we're going to talk about the race later on. You have a Race Across America as a fundraiser for the Gaia Home. But let's begin by finding out, what is Gaia Home?
Well, currently today in North Dakota, there is not a place that specializes in end-of-life care in a true home setting. Now, this is an option in many other states, but it currently doesn't exist here. And so that is the gap in care Gaia Home is looking to fill. What we're proposing to do and raising funds for is to build a neighborhood of townhomes and community spaces that families can move into, receive hospice services from a hospice provider, and then our home's caregiving staff will be there 24/7 to take the caregiver role off of the family so that families really can just treasure their precious time together during that final season of life versus having to worry about that caregiver role. Just spend that quality time together.
That's beautiful.
And if people watching haven't been in that situation before, they might have a hard time envisioning it. And what a special opportunity this would be to have that kind of care and that burden lifted. Because what does it typically look like now? If somebody needs to move into hospice, how is that done? So
most people will want to receive hospice services in their home where they're surrounded by their family, their current setting and environment. And how it works is the hospice program comes in and gets the family and the individual all set up with a plan of care, with the medications needed to help with the palliation of pain, with all the medical equipment that's also needed. And then they put together the plan of care and train family members on how to provide that care. Because the hospice program is not there 24/7, providing care 24/7 by the patient's bedside. And that's somewhat of a misconception. If you have not gone through hospice program or hospice in the past, you wouldn't quite know that. And so that's where Gaia Home will fill a gap in care. Like I said, most people would love to start hospice in their home, but then it gets to a point where the disease progression is just too hard for the family members to provide that care. Or sometimes the person receiving the hospice care doesn't want their family members to provide the end-of-life caretaking task because they can feel undignified in regards to it. They feel like they don't have their dignity associated with it. Some people just choose not to have hospice in their home because it can be very traumatic for any family members who need to live in their home once the individual has passed. And so that's where Gaia Home can become a solution, because right now, if they don't want to have it in their home, they don't have the 24-hour caregiver support, where they would move into would be into a hospital setting or a skilled nursing facility. So great options, but we're providing a different option, a more homey option where a family can still be a family, have that experience at Gaia Home, and then go on with the rest of their lives in their regular home.
And you know, I've interviewed people before who've gone through hospice, and they say, you know, being with their loved one. I wasn't with my mom when she passed away, but had visited her many times in a nursing home, and there was somebody with her when she died. It was late at night, but so many people call it a sacred time, very sacred time. And so to hear that you are going to make that possible, to take away maybe some of the part that's harder, that kind of interfere with that beautiful time that you should have together.
Yep. And that's, you know, I look at it in the future, what is it going to be like? I mean, I'm an only child, and I'm thinking about my parents, and you know, I just don't know if I would have the ability, and I just to provide those types of end of life care that would be needed. And I just don't know how well my parents would receive that. And I just would rather have that time, that precious time, just being their daughter, instead of having to also be the caregiver. And I think that they would appreciate it as well. And I think there are many other people out there that can relate to that story, as well as many other stories.
What a beautiful thing to have. And, you know, I didn't know even the difference between hospice or palliative care, or I had no clue that there wasn't actually a full-time caregiver when you were on hospice, and that you were just kind of impromptu trained, because that's scary too. I wouldn't want that liability. Like, I love my family too much to want to be that person that's taking care at the end of life.
And we've visited, so we've been looking at this option for many years. It's really a conversation that's been in this community since about 2013, and it was in 2019 when Terry Rockstead had gathered an advisory group of community leaders to start really looking at this idea, and provided some seed funding through the Rockstead Foundation so that we could get started in setting up the nonprofit of Gaia Home, working with the legislature this past legislative session to create a bill that creates a licensure for what we're trying to do, recruiting our board members, our operations advisory group members, and also our capital campaign committee members, because we just launched the leadership phase of a capital campaign so that we can raise the funds to not only build Gaia Home, but also to provide startup costs, you know, for the care and all the other expenses that are associated with that, and as well as to endow Gaia Home so that we can be there for individuals who wouldn't have an ability to pay as well.
So I have some pictures to help people wrap their mind around this. Like, what is this going to look like? And where is it going to be located? Is there...
So right now we are hoping to secure the land by the end of this year. So we just launched the leadership phase of our campaign. And
then you can tell me when the pictures come up, you can tell us what this is.
Yes, so this would be our phase 1 site plan, which we're launch a leadership phase of a $12 million capital campaign, and that would be for phase 1 to help us build 6 townhomes and a main building and the connectors to the main building. And that main building is going to be with community spaces, because we know that there is a lot of healing that happens when people are around other people that are having a shared experience, and that's what the community center will help provide. And then this is a rendering of what the townhomes could potentially look like. This is an initial rendering. And so again, each one of the townhomes will be roughly 1,400 square feet, 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, with the patient building room being larger for extra beds and such.
And you were talking about, we'll get back to this, because you were talking about the cost and the startup cost, and because you're fundraising for this, right?
Yes.
So can you explain, $12 million is the goal?
$12 million is our campaign goal. And so this last year, what we did a philanthropic feasibility study, and we interviewed 20 individuals that were potential major contributors to this project, and through that we received around $4.5 to $6.5 million in gift indications, and so that led us to the thought that we could raise around $12 million so that we can get the building built, as well as provide for operational funding, and then, like I said, to start an endowment as to go into the future. And we'll continue to fundraise thereafter. This is to get us started and get us going.